everybody, and welcome back to Lauren Loves Color. This is Lauren. I am here to share two new books with you today. This is the Mosaic Art Patterns 3x3 Color by Number by Sachin Sachdeva, and this is Adorable Nature cross-stitch style adult coloring book, and this is by Alice Mills Publishing. This is a series of books that I actually thought would be very interesting to people who are like me, cross-stitchers, diamond painters, alike, or any colorists. So I wanted to put these books together because I feel like they're similar in some ways and different in other ways, and I kind of like grouping some of my flip throughs together to appeal to people that have particular interests. So both of these books I did receive this week. I was very kindly sent this book by Sachin Sachdeva for review, so I always like to give that disclaimer. This book, Adorable Nature, I purchased myself. This book was kind of my second book that I purchased based off of my reward system, and I finally jumped into this. Danny Buttons has been enabling me and trying to push me towards buying these books ever since she got addicted to her Christmas book. She knows that I'm a former cross-stitcher, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about why I held off for so long on getting this book and what my thoughts and opinions are now that I have it purchased for myself. Also, with this Mosaic Art Patterns book, I want to also talk about this book. You can see that maybe I have colored some pages out of here, so I have some thoughts and opinions on this as well. And so let's go ahead and get started. This book by Sachin Sachdeva should be a very similar type of book to books that you may be familiar with from the Belba family, as well as Sachin Sachdeva actually has, I think, at least one more book, if not two more books that are this 3x3 millimeter color by number. Now, I will say that the 3x3 is not my most favorite, and the reason being is because they take such a longer amount of time to color. I'm really in just kind of the mood for doing something quick, but there are times that I do like to have things that are a little bit more detailed. What I do like about this book, though, is it is patterns. So it is kind of like once you have figured out the pattern, it's a lot easier and quicker to color. But I also wanted to utilize this time as I was reviewing this book to try a few different techniques just to see what worked well for me, so that maybe if you were hesitant to color in a book that was a little more detailed like this, that you could find a technique that maybe works for you to speed up the process. So this is kind of my color palette that I use here. I use my Stabilo pens. I have the 88 fine liners, as well as I have the 68s, which are a little bit larger felt tip pen. I'm going to bring my light back over so we can see a little bit more now. I really like using the Stabilos in this book. I think they work very, very well. He does have listed here all of his other books that he has done. So I'm just trying to look. Vintage Cars is the one that I know he does a 3x3. He has Inside Home I have, which is a larger 5x5, and he has Sea Creatures, which I think was his first Mosaic book, which is also 5x5. He also has his Doodle and Color series listed here, and then an affirmation coloring book listed here. So this was published in 2021. I believe it just came out a couple weeks ago. He always has this, of course, really adorable belongs to page. And then just information about the book. It's a 21 color palette. He does have the color palette listed nicely here on the back of the book. This is kind of his standard 21 color palette. So if you already have color matches to his color palette, you can carry that on over. And then he has a couple of additional examples of some patterns that are included in the book. So I'll zoom in so you can see that. This cute little cat pattern, which you will see that I colored. And then also he has this kind of little Nemo fish, clownfish, pattern. Can't talk today. Oh, and these were some of the other Mosaic books. Gosh, the glare is really bad. That you can see. Inside Home. This is the Sea Creatures, and then the Vintage Cars. So let's go ahead and dive into the book. If you are not familiar with the style of books, maybe you are a cross-stitcher and you are watching this for the first time, this is like a cross-stitch pattern. Technically, you could take this and you could either diamond paint it or you could cross-stitch it. or you can color it. But it kind of tickles that fancy, especially if you're a cross stitcher or a diamond painter, of putting color into kind of a square or geometric shape. So each of these little squares here, and I'm going to try to zoom in enough so that you can see it, has a number that is inside of the square. And so what all that you're going to do is you're going to take the corresponding color, you will color in that square. One thing I do consistently love about Sachin Sachdeva's books, it's a little too far out, the zooming is going to be a little funny today, is that he always has the color palette also listed on the left hand side. Now this is the entire color palette that he has included on every page, not just the numbers that are included on the page that you're coloring. So you will probably not use the entire 21 palette on the pages that you are coloring. What I do also love about his books is that each of the pages for his color by number book are single-sided. So if you have a little bit of bleed through from your markers or whatever you're using, you don't have to be too worried about it carrying on to the next page that you're coloring. So this is the first page that I colored here, which is this group of, looks like doctors and nurses or healthcare workers. I really love this. You may or may not know this about me, is that I am a nurse myself. And with COVID, this has been a really, really difficult year for us. So when I started coloring this, I actually became somewhat emotional about it because I felt like it was such a cool thing that he was honoring, the healthcare workers, especially during this time with COVID. And I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it struck a chord with me. Also, being a nurse, this kind of turquoise color is actually the color of scrubs that I used to wear as a nurse. We had standard colors that we had to wear, and it was called Caribbean blue, and it was almost this exact color. And so to me, that I think was what made it even more emotional, is it reminded me of the scrub color that I wore when I was working as a nurse. So the patterns are really, really cute. And one thing that I also really like about this book is that some of the patterns, it's not every single square is filled in. So if you're like me too and you're afraid of these books being time consuming, what's nice is he does have some patterns on here that have quite a bit of white space. I'm sorry about that, guys. I'm getting over a really, really bad cold. So I may cough here and there. I probably should have brought something to drink. But I wanted to do this to demonstrate this is what it looks like when you do fill in each of the pixels individually. It does give a much bolder, brighter, intense color than some of the other methods that I'm going to show you. But it is also the most time consuming because you are filling in each of the squares. The next image that I'm going to show you that I colored is this one. And I just love how this one turned out. This is obviously, in case you can't see it, it is hamburgers, pizzas, and then these I have figured I think are hot dogs. And so what I did in this, instead of coloring in each of the squares individually, is I actually colored them in with dots. So I just took my pen, these were the Stabilo 68s, the kind of larger felt tip pens, and I just colored little dots. And honestly, I was a little bit nervous at the beginning as if all of my dots didn't look exactly the same as to whether or not it would look really off. But what I have found is that it doesn't really matter, because when you actually zoom out on the picture, you can't tell. The effect is still there, and it still gives a pretty nice and bold picture without it looking too overtly pixelated. So this, I believe, is probably going to be what I use on these books moving forward, because I think it'll go really fast. This is the only 3x3 book that I have, other than the 100 Best by Sachin Sachdeva has some vintage card pages that are 3x3s. And then also I do have a Belba family book, the Wild Animals book, that I absolutely love, and that I've been doing this third method that I will show you, but I think I may switch to this method. This is next. So this is the cross stitch method. So if you're a cross stitcher, you may really, really love this. And I have to say, I love the look of this effect, but it does take a lot of time. This is the cross stitch method. So in each of the spaces here, you're going to see that I actually made a cross in each of the squares rather than filling them in or using a circle. What's nice about this method, and the pro about this method, is that it does fill up the square really nicely, so there's not kind of this awkward white space, around the outside like it is with the circle method. And I guess you could make your circles larger. I didn't make them that big. So it does fill up the space really nicely. However, I do find that this is very time consuming. I almost feel like it's as time consuming as just going ahead and filling in the square completely. So with that being said, I think what I will do is I will switch to the other method, but you choose whatever's right for you and whatever feels right for you. Maybe you like the look or the effect of one method versus the other, but I think all of them create a really nice and beautiful image. I will say that all of the patterns that I colored, the three that I have colored in here, are really just nice, bright, and vibrant colors. And that is, I think, one of the main characteristics of Sachin's artwork is that in his color by number books, he always has this beautiful and bright, vivid color palette, which I think is just so appealing to so many. So he mentions in this book that there are over 25 images. I think I counted exactly 25, but I may be off. It's somewhere around 25. If he does have more than 25 in here, it's maybe 26. So I'm not going to flip through this because it's just a whole bunch of empty grids. So there's really not much of anything that you can see at all. But I think that that gives you kind of a feel for what this book is. And it's really fun. I do also like he has a really nice color chart and stuff in the back. And so if you are looking at maybe doing a 3x3 book, maybe you're slightly intimidated by it, or maybe you just like patterns and you think that this would be something different, I definitely think this is kind of a must-have to pick up. So thank you to Sachdeva for allowing me to try this out, because I really feel like I have kind of found my groove into how I will proceed with these books moving forward. So let's go on to the next book. This is Adorable Nature. And so this is an actual cross-stitch style book. So this is intended to look like cross-stitch. Now this, maybe if you saw my last flip through, that's about a couple of unique books that are on this premium paper. I am seeing more and more coloring books now coming out with premium paper, and I am living for it. This book is also the next one. I wanted to get this book because, again, this is something different. It's something different than the norm for a coloring book. And I really am all about it. And so I had seen this book. Lisa's Coloring Corner had reviewed this book. I think there are three, excuse me guys, my throat. There are 3 books in this series. There's a Christmas one, there's the Adorable Nature book, and I believe there is also a Flowers book. And by the way, these 2 books that I'm reviewing today, I will make sure to link in the comments below, in the description box below, I'm sorry. And I had seen her review this, and I was slightly hesitant. It is really hard sometimes when you're reviewing a book for the audience to really be able to see the symbols and patterns, and to kind of, I guess, from a size perspective, know how large or small something is. So let's get to it. I am going to try to flip through this book a little bit. I am going to struggle a little bit because, you guys, the glare from this paper, it's that premium quality paper, is so nice. Let me move that real quick so that there's not as much of a glare. That's a little bit better. So this, you can see, this is actually intended to really look exactly like cross stitch. So there are little X's in here. The thing that is really nice is they are all surrounded by black. So if your marker spills over a little bit or something, you do have to where it will not like bleed onto another symbol and stuff if you're pretty careful. The images are a pretty nice size. They're not overwhelming or super large. The interesting thing, and that's as far as I can zoom in, is that inside of each of these squares are actually symbols. What I was really afraid of was that these would be really, really hard to see. Now let's look over at the color key here. This is your color key, and oh gosh, this is going to be hard to see. So inside of this color key, it does have, there are small little symbols inside of the X's that correspond with the page on the right-hand side. What I think is the saving grace of this book is that they actually have a kind of color example image so that you can kind of follow. And I would say they were very smart about keeping their color palette on each page very, very small. Now the color palette does change from page to page, so you do kind of have to be aware of that. But I will say that these symbols, I would say, are pretty, I guess they're not as hard to see now looking at them as what I had anticipated them to be. I really thought I was going to struggle, and I have good, I have decent eyesight. I shouldn't say I have good eyesight. I have decent eyesight. And I thought I would really struggle. But I think Lisa and even Danielle have come out and said that once you kind of know what you're looking for, and once you use this example on the left-hand side, it makes it a little bit easier. So like in this example, if I know that I'm coloring red or pink, I know not to be looking for the symbols and searching on the outside of the image. I know that it's really going to be in the central part of the image here. And also it's very helpful to start maybe with some of the colors that are smaller and work your way up, so that once I get maybe to some of these background colors, which are like these light blue and navy, that it's like I've colored everything else and then all that's left is either the light blue or the navy, and it makes it a little bit easier as opposed to starting with the largest color first and then working your way. So I hope that that makes sense. So let's take a look at some of the images in here. And I will say what also did sell me on the book is I do love the cross stitch style. Of course, I am a cross stitcher. And so that is a love for me. So I think this book is really interesting, and I'm interested to see how I enjoy this book. But I also love how cute the names of the images are and how cute the images are. So this one is called Floating in Paradise. Benny the Bun Bun, a little bunny. Let's see, maybe if I hold this down like that, you can see it better. Cherries on top. These little cherries, and actually I'm going to just scroll in because it doesn't necessarily matter. Now some of the images on the right hand side look like they're in hoops or frames, which is kind of fun. This is Garden in Bloom. Sorry guys, I am just not getting the zooming right today. Garden in Bloom, which is a bunch of different flowers. Gala named Jenny, cute little bird. That one's a little smaller. Like the images, some of them take up the whole page and some don't. Humming Along, it's cute, a hummingbird. Pinning for the Tropics, or Pining for the Tropics, I bet is what that is because it's a pineapple. This one I think just makes you laugh. Toodle the Turtle. Tulip Tradition. Flutter by Butterfly. I think this is just really nice for spring. Squirrel's Treasure. Squirrel's little nut. Felix Fox. He's cute. So I may have to color him for, I think it's Foxy February for Kits and Caboodles. I think is doing, Michelle is doing color along with foxes. Toucan of Paradise. Sweeter Than a Rose. Portrait of Polly. Smooth Sailing. A Crab in a Pinch. Whistling Thistle. And The Dearest Thing, which is a cute little deer. So these images too, so one thing I will tell you is that you can definitely use alcohol marker in them. Just make sure you do understand that they will bleed through. So if you're coloring, let's say this image here, this Whistling Thistle image, and you're coloring here, it is going to bleed over here. And at least from the feedback that I have seen and kind of heard on the reviews online, is that then it makes it really, really hard to be able to see kind of your, sample image, and then also to see the symbols that are inside of the key. So one thing that I will tell you is that my suggestion would be to either use, if you don't want to go in order, use water markers. I don't think water-based markers are really going to give you like this really streaky effect because everything is in these really tiny squares. Or else I would say, worst case scenario, if you really want to use alcohol markers, it's just work from the back moving forward. I will probably try to use water-based markers in here, my Stabilos or maybe my Tombos in these books, just so that I can color them in whatever order that I want to, because maybe there's a theme or something that I want to color an image that's maybe not in not in order, like that Felix Fox. He was super cute. And I want to do that for a color along. I want to be able to have the freedom to just say, okay, this is the image that I want to color, and just to color in that image. So with that being said, I do think this is a really nice book. I do think that this is going to be something that I'm going to enjoy, but the jury's still a little bit out for me. I want to color a couple of images in this book, and hopefully next month you'll see me with some finished images, so I can kind of tell you kind of my full and final review of this book. But with that being said, go check these books out if you're interested. Like I said, I will link both of these books in the description box below so that you can purchase them or look at them on Amazon. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your week, and we will talk again soon. Bye.